Hi, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us through some minor technical difficulties. I'm going to claim middle-aged in that part. And we will move on. That's totally fine, right? So for anybody who is here new with us, my name is Allison Venditti. I am the founder of Moms at Work. Moms at Work is Canada's largest and most trusted network for working mothers. And we are very, very lucky today to have Laura with us. But everybody has been talking about CUPE. We're talking about the strike. And so I first wanted to thank Laura for taking the time out of what is probably the busiest time in her life to speak with us, and start by saying to everybody watching that you can support education workers and be frustrated that our kids are missing schools. It does not have to be one or the other. Being frustrated does not prevent you from supporting the people who care for our kids. So during this conversation, our goal is going to be about learning what is happening. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Moms at Work, we are dedicated to supporting working mothers in Canada. And this negotiation that they're going through right now impacts us all as workers, as caregivers, and as voters in this province. So let's get started. Laura, so I'm going to say hello, fellow Moms at Work person. Do you want to start by just telling us a little bit about yourself? Because I don't think people actually know who Laura Walton is.
Sure. So I am Laura Walton. I am the proud mom of two. My littles are not so little anymore. They're 16 and 20. And I am the president of the Ontario School Board Council of Unions, and we represent 55,000 CUPE education workers in the province of Ontario in all 4 school boards. And I guess I've been doing this activism, activist work now since my not so littles were little. They were about 6 and 2 when I first started to dabble in it. And I've been away from them for the last 4 years, really, but here we are.
So we grabbed all the questions from people in the comments, but we're going to start getting a base, because everybody's noticed we're getting a lot of weird math from the government about raises and days off. But I want to get even more simple about that. So for people who are watching who don't know how union bargaining works, can you talk to us about when the bargaining actually started, like what it means, and like, do you do it every day?
Some days it feels like I do it nothing but
yeah.
So bargaining actually started for us. We served notice back in June 3rd, 2022. So it's almost been 170 days of doing this, which is a significantly long time when you think about it. And we served notice as soon as we were legally allowed to. There's actually a timeline that legally you can serve notice. And so the minute that we were able to, we did, because we wanted to work through the summer. We wanted to get this done because, contrary to like the narrative that's out there, we're all parents. Right. The vast majority of us have kids either in the system right now or have graduated out of the system. And if we aren't parents ourselves, often we are uncles, aunts, grandparents, we connect with kids in some way. This government really just dragged their heels at every chance that they could get, which is really unfortunate, because, we could have got this done if folks just put their minds to it. And so we represent, 55,000 education workers who on average, and I'm going to stress the average, on average make $39,000 a year. So by nature of being average, that means some make more, but also that means that some make less. And what we're trying to achieve is, a living wage. The majority of us work multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. And we do that because we love the work we do. But, I keep saying, like, you can't fill your car on passion, and you can't feed your family on, joy.
Shocking, right?
I've been often quoted to say, until which time that I can feed and clothe my children with magic beans, I will never apologize for asking for, real wage increases. I think all labor has value.
Right. And I think that, especially this government has selected female-dominated unions to do this work on, and that cannot go unnoticed. So Moms at Work has been talking about Bill 124 for a long time. So when you all started, everybody is in solidarity, because we know that women's works tend to be undervalued. And so would you like to just so everybody understands, because there's a big misconception between teachers and education workers. So what education workers
who are we?
Who are you?
So we are essentially anyone else in your school that's not a teacher, is the best way that I would it. So we're the EAs and the ECEs and the custodians and the secretaries and the library workers, IT, mental health, speech language, tradespeople, maintenance people, anyone who's not a teacher or a principal, chances are we represent them.
Okay. So I find it difficult that it's been going on for this long, that you've been meeting since then. So without getting into the notwithstanding clause, because that's a whole other topic of conversation, we averted a strike, right? We did that once, then we came back to it. And so what is pushing you here again?
Well, I think, after Bill 28 was repealed, and listen, I'm just going to lift up that the fact that a predominantly female workforce who is very low paid took on the government and won. And that should be a real message to everybody that collectively we have the power. They may have the majority in the legislature, but collectively we have the power in the province, in the streets. And it's time for us to join together, put aside the fact that we always will have differences, right? Not everybody's going to agree on everything, and nor should they. But collectively, we can make change if we all come together. And I think what happened is, after Bill 28 was done, Ford said, oh, well, we've got this generous raise, and people just assumed that he learned his lesson or something, and all things were tickety-boo. And we were like, well, wait a minute. The reason the bill happened is because you didn't want us to strike. Nothing has actually really changed at the bargaining table. What are you doing? And so we pushed as hard as we could. And then we said, listen, if we don't do this, we are going to have to strike, which is where we were before they put in a draconian bill. So it's not even like we've been on strike twice. The first one, people literally just put down their work and said, I'm not going to go to work if you're going to force legislation on me. This time they're saying, I'm going to use my power to push back to ensure that we are setting a standard of how workers should be treated in the province of Ontario.
And for everybody out there who is part of, Moms at Work represents over 15,000 people, this is not a new narrative for you. I encourage all women to do this. The fact is that this being done through bargaining is the same conversation about asking for more and being respected that they're just doing as a group, which we fully support. So yeah, and this is something that comes up over and over and over again. So we had 4 questions from that were very consistent from our Instagram stories. The first question was what do you wish parents knew about the state of classrooms in Ontario?
This one hurts my heart because I think, listen, I'm going to be honest. I have a 16-year-old son. The only thing that he got out of a pandemic was a bachelor degree in Xbox. The last 2 years were extremely, extremely tough on him. And, I think people often think that because the schools are open, that everything is this idealistic way that it was pre-pandemic. And let's be clear, even pre-pandemic, schools were not in good shape, right? What the real scary piece is right now in our schools is they're extremely underfunded. They're extremely understaffed. Because the workers are not making a good wage, and people will say to me, oh, well, if you don't like it, leave. Well, that's the problem. They are leaving. And what's happening is we're having unqualified people come in because they can't get qualified people. So that's really worrisome, because one of the things that we do as an EA is, my job is to ensure the safety and success of students. Often those students are the ones that have an inability or, a deficit of sort in able to communicate. And when you're not able to communicate, or when there's not someone there to help you communicate, often there is behavior that's associated, and behavior is a form of communication. What's unfortunate is that often these lead to what people call violent incidences. And I have a really hard time with that narrative, because children are not violent. People are not violent. Behavior is a communication method. And when people are not getting their needs met, often this is the result. And so we know that we just did a really good survey in the midst of a pandemic, of all things, where we found out violence is on the increase, and the majority of our members have been exposed to it. We know that there is, not enough. As an EA, when I first started, I used to work with, one child, and then go to the next child. When I left, I was working with a different child every 15 minutes. There's some real significant gaps that are happening in our children's learning, not to even get started on the fact that right now we're having a pediatric crisis when it comes to health. And one of the reasons we're having a pediatric crisis is we don't have enough people in the schools keeping them clean. because that's just gone by the wayside because I don't know, the pandemic's done. I'm not sure how that all transpired, but apparently there was a magic wand waved. And, so we're saying like, hey, listen, let's talk about what really needs to happen. We need to have clean schools. We need to have supported schools. We need to have staff in schools. And let's be clear, just putting kids in a building, that's not education. It's the people, those caring adults that make sure your child is safe, secure, and successful. That's education.
Sounds a lot like their healthcare narrative where we're going to get more beds. And we're like, yes, but beds don't actually care for people.
Well, you are a conservative government that is really focusing on monetizing services. That's how you see it, right? If I just put another line in the factory, I can produce more product. And, I don't need the people, I'll just automate it. Well, when you're working in public services, it's public, it's people, and those people, that labor has value. And this government just keeps trying to drive the labor value down. And when I keep reminding people, because, oh Lord, I've heard from a lot, people are upset, and I am upset too. But I believe a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can achieve something now, what can we achieve for everybody else moving forward?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to flip the question here because consistently people are saying, why is the government doing this, right? We do want our kids in class, but we love our public school staff. I'm reading this verbatim from someone put this in. Is this really just about wage increase? Or are there other things that you're negotiating that are making classrooms better that maybe people aren't aware of?
Yeah, so definitely, I will be fair, it is about a wage increase because these folks need to be able to put money into the bank. They need to keep a roof over their head. They need to be able to put food on the table. And I don't think that that's different than any other person out there in our province or even our country or around the world. But what we're also trying to achieve, and I know that there's been a big blow up about this, suddenly people were saying, well, you never talked about services, but we've always talked about the need for services. We've always talked about needing an ECE in every classroom and more EAs and more custodians. And we really are trying to say to the government, these things should be enshrined in a collective agreement, in a contract, so that when parents know they send their children to school, they know that those people are going to be there. And that's why we've been so public about negotiations, is because we believe that this contract is also your contract. And you should know that when you send your child to school, there is going to be a qualified secretary, ECE, EA, custodian, all of those folks are going to be there, and they're going to be there working for your child. And so, yeah, that's, we're fighting for that. We're saying, where are these jobs? Why are these jobs not in place? Why are we always looking to cut education worker jobs to balance the books? We can't do that any longer.
And this is totally moms at work opinion about things. And I was like, the systemic defunding of our public services as a taxpayer makes me so angry. I am not paying my taxes for things. I'm doing it for good quality education, excellent public health. Like, I have no idea what they're doing. And this is not CUPE saying this is me saying this to say that I understand parents' frustrations, because I'm like, we pay a lot of money to go to these things. And my expectation was that it would go to my children's school. I have 3 children in public education. That's what my expectation was. And so I think this government sorely misunderstood where my allegiances lay, where I wanted my tax money to go, because I sure as heck didn't want a refund for tutoring services. I wanted it to go to my school. So yeah. On that narrative, ideally and realistically, what does an ideal classroom look like for you? Like, what would that look like?
So first of all, I want to say, you have to build it from the ground up. So an ideal classroom looks like a classroom in a well-maintained building. I find it extraordinary that we have a $16 billion repair backlog, and nobody seems to be worried about that. Like, I don't know, in your own home, do you not fix things as you go, or do you wait until it falls apart completely? And so I have a real concern that, from the ground up, it should be the bones, right? Should be there. It should be a well-maintained classroom that when there is repairs that are needed, there's a CUPE staff on site who can get those repairs done in a quick way so that nobody is, harmed, injured, that kind of thing. And then we build the people in and we talk about making sure that students have access to the caring adults that they need to be successful. And I always talk to, members when I'm talking about it. My son will tell you, he's had a much better school year this year. He's back. And I'll say, well, what's the difference, Mac? Like what happened? And he's like, well, it's because, the custodian asked me how football practice was. And the guidance secretary came out and reminded me I needed to get my application in for, the sports high school major program. And, there's a couple of EAs in his school that know his mom works 2.5 hours away from him. So they make sure that he has an apple and a granola bar because he's infamous for, rolling out of bed and just going to school. Those are the people that make your kid's school magical. And in my ideal world for CUPE is that we have those people there so that a child doesn't need to be in crisis before somebody responds. We're there before the crisis actually happens. And we've got those supports in so that every kid walking through those doors has the same ability to be successful. And that's the magic of public education, right? It is an equal opportunity for everyone to be successful, regardless of your socioeconomic, regardless of your past, whatever has happened. It is a place where everyone is equal when they walk in the doors.
So, because I know you have lots to do, any final things that you want parents to know? And then I'll give my final word on the things that I appreciate.
So, you know what, the one thing that's really struck me this week, I'm a mom, and it never leaves my mind as I'm sitting at that table. I'm a mom first. And if we're fighting, if we are trying and we're, saying, there may not be school on Monday, it's not taken at an easy, like we don't find that an easy choice to make. We're doing it because the alternative is so much worse than having the kids out right now. The alternative is not having those people that make your child's day magical, because we know that when you hand your child over to us every morning, we treat them like they're our own. And we want to have as many of us there to keep them safe and secure. And I know that this government wants to divide us because that makes it easy for them. And I would really encourage them to remember that, like, at the end of the day, I'm a mom. I'm a mom first. I'm an education worker second. And then way on down the line, I'm a union activist. But if we're making these decisions, it's because the alternative is far worse than what we've got right now.
And from Moms at Work standpoint, I need everybody to understand, because we talk a lot about women at work, about mothers at work. I'm like, CUPE is very much drawing a line in the sand on how women and people of color and workers in general are going to be treated as we go forth. So the use of the notwithstanding clause is the most disgusting thing I have seen in a very, very long time. Very scary stuff. So I think people need to recognize that this union is not just defending themselves, but they're pushing the back of every worker in Ontario. They're protecting your rights that we have fought so hard to get. And the last thing I will say is, when this government says that it speaks for parents, please understand that that is not true. Moms at Work also speaks for parents. CUPE also speaks for parents. So please understand that this narrative is inaccurate when they say, because please understand that that government does not speak for me at all, anything that has come out. So to end this, Moms at Work stands in absolute solidarity with everything that you are doing. I know that this is tough as a parent, and I know that this is hard, and that we appreciate everything that you're doing to both protect our children and to protect women in this province.
Thank you. I appreciate all the support.
Yes, and we appreciate all of your support. So I will be posting this. I will send it to your people. And hopefully at some time in the future.
Got it done.
That's that, right? Great.
I'll try and figure it out for the next time.
Yeah, have a wonderful afternoon. And for people tomorrow, you're at Yonge and Dundas, right? If people would like to come out and support, 11 till 12 at Yonge and Dundas Square, come and show your support.
That'd be perfect.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.